Reliable, well-built, affordable, and incredibly stylish. The Mazda 3 is undoubtedly one of the best compact hatchbacks ever to be conceived, thanks to Mazda's Skyactiv technology, Kodo design language, and a very Japanese approach to building things. And now, for the upcoming model year, Mazda has decided to amplify all of these things and pave the way for the Mazda 3's future to the top of the food chain once again. So, let's not waste any more time and take a deep dive at how the 2026 Mazda 3 finally delivers what drivers demanded. Refreshed exterior. The current generation of the Mazda 3 has been introduced way back in 2019, and let's be honest, it hasn't aged a day. That's why Mazda has decided against doing an extensive facelift, instead only opting for changing some minor trims and parts, like a mildly redesigned front bumper, different trim pieces, and so on. What will happen is essentially what happened with the Mazda 6, a progressive change and a large redesign, but a vehicle that is still very much a part of the same generation. Honestly, the Mazda 3 is easily one of the most beautiful hatchbacks a person can purchase today, borrowing many design cues from some of the most beautiful vehicles out there. The front end is so unapologetically Mazda, and we'd argue that the Kodo design philosophy helps Mazda establish itself on the market visually, so much that even non-car people are starting to recognize them without ever seeing the badge. We love how subdued the front end is. It's just so effortlessly elegant, and it doesn't insist upon itself, much unlike its direct rivals, which have all become very loud and obnoxious. However, what we adore more is the rear of the Mazda 3. That gorgeous C-pillar, combined with those thin and elegant lights and a smooth, unbothered tailgate and bumper design. The whole car just looks way more expensive than it is. In fact, it reminds us of the Alfa Romeo Brera, which was sold overseas some 2 decades ago and is colloquially known as one of the most beautiful vehicles ever made, and by far the most beautiful hatchback ever. As such, we're glad that Mazda won't be changing the design that much because, frankly, the Mazda 3 is perfect just the way it is. Hybrid introduced. However, what isn't perfect with the Mazda 3, at least until now, is the fact that there was no hybrid available for the US market. The rest of the world got multiple mild hybrids. However, we've been stuck with either a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated inline-4 or the same lump that has a turbocharger attached to it. Now, don't get us wrong, the Skyactiv G technology allows the Mazda 3 to be as frugal as a vehicle of this size and power gets. However, that simply isn't enough anymore, as people crave hybrids. Well, that's about to change, as the new Mazda 3 will also come as a hybrid. The hybrid powertrain will be based around the naturally aspirated 2.5-liter engine, and it produces around 200 HP, give or take, which is not a massive amount, but is more than enough for a power split hybrid compact hatchback. This version will drastically improve MPG figures, which are already almost hybrid-like. Open road MPG will jump from 37 MPG to 40 MPG, which isn't a world of difference. However, that's nothing compared to in-town MPG figures. Instead of returning only 27 MPG, like the non-hybrid, the Mazda hybrid will return over 35 MPG around town, potentially even more. This powertrain will be combined with a 6-speed automatic gearbox, so you don't need to worry about a CVT gearbox screaming bloody murder at you every time you decide to go faster than 10 miles per hour. Improved interior. The Mazda 3 is definitely a gorgeous car on the inside, and while design-wise the interior hasn't really aged, technology really does show its ugly head, because the Mazda 3 lags dearly behind its competition. First of all, the infotainment screen is a dated unit. Sure, we love the fact that you can operate it using a swivel instead of just a touchscreen. However, we would prefer it also being a touchscreen for drivers to adjust more easily to whatever their preference is. Thankfully, this is exactly what will happen with the Mazda 3's infotainment screen, as no longer will you be stuck with the touchscreen only if you use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Instead, you will be able to simply swipe it and use it like a regular touchscreen, even with its own operating system. And for those of us that like a dial-based command input, don't worry, the dial will remain intact. Additionally, one big difference with the Mazda 3 on the inside will be the gauge cluster. It too will be completely digital on higher levels, borrowed from the likes of the Mazda CX-70 and CX-90. both of which have already fully transitioned to a completely digital gauge cluster. Don't worry though, you will still be able to get a lower spec model with analog gauges. Another big difference will be the seats. They'll now be much softer, much nicer to touch, and far better to sit in on longer journeys. And you won't need to worry about butt cramps that have been a concern with modern Mazdas. Importantly, the layout of the interior won't change. Apart from a possible infotainment size increase, the entire interior will remain the same, which is to say, very ergonomic. Way to go, Mazda! You really managed to listen to your audiences and improve upon the interior in every possible way. More comfortable and advanced suspension. One of the biggest complaints for the Mazda 3's current generation is its comfort. Apart from having stiff seats, the Mazda 3 is, underneath, a much simpler car than any of its predecessors. For example, it doesn't use independent rear suspension, instead relying on a torsion beam, which reduces comfort, drivability, and general ride quality drastically, in return for marginally cheaper production. Unfortunately, this has only hurt the Mazda 3, which used to be known as a comfortable and engaging vehicle to drive. As a result, Mazda has decided to backtrack on this decision and reintroduce multi-link suspension at the back, which will ensure the vehicle much better performance over uneven surfaces, as well as provide better control in terms of handling. Additionally, the Mazda 3 will utilize softer shocks and springs to make the vehicle even softer around bumps, because most people that own one have been complaining that it is terribly stiff. As a result of all this, the Mazda 3 will see a drastic improvement in terms of comfort, and it will definitely be propelled to the top of the class, if not at the absolute top. Made in the USA. Because of the tariffs being introduced, and even though Japan has been avoided for now, Mazda has decided to transition their production to the US. Currently, the Mazda 3 hatchback is only being made in Japan, with the sedan being made in Mexico too. However, both body styles will now transition to the US to keep the vehicle costs as low as possible and production as stable and reliable as possible. Now, does this mean that the quality will drop? Yes, most certainly, as Japan definitely has a much better attention to detail when it comes down to quality control and general work quality. However, it also means a lot of job openings for people, as well as the price going down in the long run, because it won't need to be imported. The Mazda 3 will be produced in Huntsville, Alabama, alongside many other Mazda models. Pricing and trim levels. And here comes the important part, pricing. Don't worry, the Mazda 3 won't go through a massive price increase. Also, there will be no changes to the trim level lineup, apart from the addition of hybrid trims. This means that the entry-level trim will be the 2.5S, and it will offer all the safety features you'll need. Cloth seats, single-zone AC, 18-inch alloy wheels, and so on. Basically, everything you'll ever need without sugarcoating it. And for that, you'll have to pay around $25,500. Next up is the Select Sport, which introduces leatherette seats, dual-zone climate controls, nicer wheels and exterior styling, but not much more than that. Still, it's only $1,000 more than the base model, and as such is well worth it in our opinion. Next up is the 2.5S Preferred, which brings in a power moonroof, a power-operated driver's seat, front seats that are heated, but the exterior and the general feel remains the same as the Select Sport, which is why we'd skip the Preferred. We'd also skip the Carbon and the Premium, as they're already over $30,000, and despite coming with leather seats, AWD, Bose 12-speaker system, and many other features. The Carbon Turbo is an okay choice if you want something more fun, as it produces 250 HP, gives you everything you need, such as heated leather seats and a nicer exterior, combined with AWD. That said, it is expensive at $34,000, so choose wisely. The Turbo Premium Plus is something we'd skip altogether, as no amount of kit can make a compact hatchback be worth $40,000. As for the hybrid trims, nothing has been confirmed yet, but you can expect 3 trims: a Hybrid S, a Hybrid Preferred, and a Hybrid Premium. All of these will give you the same amount of kit as the non-hybrid trims, and will set you back $2,000 more. So, if you're doing a lot of commuting around town, we'd recommend this powertrain.